This week, we launched the new generation, the new era of X-Men under Tom Report. If you were expecting big things, I think you will be very disappointed. If you were expecting basically not much, I think you'll be very satisfied. If you're expecting great art from Stegman, I think you'll be disappointed. If you're expecting this book to move away from Krakoa, you'll be disappointed. I think if you were expecting this book to continue on with Krakoa, you'll also be disappointed. I literally can't think of one single person that's going to enjoy this comic book, Doc.
You don't go far enough with any of the ideas you do. You're trying to play this weird balancing act, trying to appease everybody, and you end up failing miserably in the process.
And Marvel Comics have really been trying to push Jed McKay as like some type of superstar. You know, he had that Moon Knight series that people liked. After that, he got the Avengers gig. Avengers have been very mediocre to average. He got the Doctor Strange gig. Very mediocre to average. He's doing the Blood Hunt event. Very mediocre to below average. And now he's launched X-Men. And I think I've finally had enough proof that Jed McKay is nothing more than an exceptionally average, mediocre comic book writer who has no ability to do something cool or groundbreaking or make any real effect on the bottom line of any company ever. He's just as average as it gets.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, Jed McKay has been around in comics for about 15 years now. He was a nobody for a very, very long time. There has been exactly 0 comic books that have ever sold because Jed McKay's name is on them. He's just the best of what's left. He's kind of like Gail Simone. That's why I felt like Jed McKay being there kind of sort of makes sense the same way that Gail Simone did, because neither of them are completely and utterly incapable of writing.
And it's pretty wild. I don't think they did a very good job of picking out the team here. Yeah, I like Cyclops, throw Beast on the team, no problem with that. You know, Psylocke, Magic. You know, there's some characters in here that obviously I like, but it's like, why is Temper here? Why is Quentin Quire here? Magneto shouldn't be on an X-Men team. Juggernaut isn't even a mutant. Why is he on an X-Men team? And it's 10 characters, and none of it really makes sense. So I do think the team dynamics and makeup are very much lacking in this book.
It feels like they gave Gail her choice. They had already picked a team for X-Force. They had already given Eve Ewing at least 2. She was allowed 2 core mutants. And then whatever was left over, based on what was the semi sort of popular characters during the Krakoan era, that's who Jed McKay got saddled with. And as a result, we just have a team of what feels like leftovers. And maybe that's by design, because the plot of this book is also nothing but leftovers.
Let's talk about the art from Ryan Stegman first. I don't like his version of Cyclops. We talk about his version of Beast. He's trying to go old school with it, but he's not doing any of the Beast stuff that would have made that really work. I absolutely despise his version of Psylocke. He doesn't make Quentin Quire look cool. Everything that I thought Stegman would bring to this title and make it actually worth looking at is not present with the heroes themselves. It's present in other stuff.
All the male characters look fairly twinky. Somehow Psylocke has more body mass than Cyclops. Juggernaut just looks weirdly proportioned. Ryan Stegman of today in this book is turning into Nick Bradshaw when he was on the Spidey book and trying to turn into Art Adams. And I was so confused. I'm like, this is Ryan Stegman, right? It was really, really jarring throughout the entire book. I don't know if he has a different inker or if he's inking himself or what. And I don't like it really at all.
Yeah, it's weird. While it is certainly an upgrade over like a Josh Cassara or certainly what Phil Noda was doing, but in comparison to himself, this is not what I expected. I expected this book, for one thing, was just going to look badass, and it looks anything but.
I don't think he's ever done a team book before, and maybe he's trying to change his style in order to be maybe more time efficient than he was, say, on Venom, which was his last ongoing gig. And I could have understood if he was going to do, if it was for about page economy and the speed of operating, since he's on his first ongoing team book, except for he's off the book in, I think, issue 3 or 4.
I saw that.
So already
Not
on
surprising.
issue
That's
4,
what Marvel does. They always bait and switch you on the artist.
Yeah.
Don't they?
Exactly. They made a big deal about it. The dude's not even there for the full first
story.
arc. Yeah.
Not even a trade.
not even the full first arc. And that's really pathetic.
Yeah, so that was strange. Getting into the story itself, it's basically just a smash and grab. You have this new X-Men team with the support element staying in Alaska. We'll get to the Beast stuff and Magneto stuff. But the team's going in there. I was a little surprised when they're going to rescue Wolverine. In fact, you mentioned the thing where he's on the X. The way that Beast is illustrated and colored in this book, I initially thought it was Beast because they have the similar haircut and his eyes were really dark. It took me a couple of seconds of really looking at it and being like, no, that's Wolverine. But basically, they're just going in there to save Wolverine from the U-Men. And I guess the extra pieces that are left over from the Orcus conflict, you just cannot get away from this Krakoa stuff. It's very frustrating.
If you expected at least even a moderate distancing from the Krakoan era in this book, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because every single plot point in this book was a reference to Krakoa. This is like that offshoot of Orcus. They're calling it the Fourth School, which are basically just U-Men version 2.0, but they're still wearing the stupid fucking AIM beekeeper suits, except for they're wearing the Orcus red instead of the AIM yellow. And then you get what's going on in the factory home thing, where it's still just talking about nothing but Krakoa. The big actual conflict here was after they rescue Wolverine and Cyclops talk, and Wolverine basically just says, I want nothing to do with this, or you don't call me again, which is just a callback to the Schism era. So all they're doing is just the exact same shit we've already seen.
I guess they're developing this Fourth School is going to be like the big villain, but it's literally just all the stuff that was under Krakoa. Now they're not just like scientists. They've turned themselves into mutants, because the way that they discovered that Wolverine was in this basement or whatever is all of a sudden there were 6 adult X genes that were activated all at the same time. They figured out Wolverine was there, and they're looking for these other 5 mutants. And then they realized, oh, the U-Men are mutants now too, but they have undefined power sets. They haven't really honed them. Oh, great, chimeras. Real fucking original.
It's the U-Men meets chimeras. Again, all you're doing is taking things that already exist and mishmashing them together. If you remember the old commercials for Combo Man, that's the closest thing I can think of, the closest analogy for the entire X-Men line at this point. All you're doing is taking slivers of something else and trying to mishmash them together into a Combo Man-esque fucking plot and characters. There is literally not a single bit here that is new. Even the fucking factory thing that used to be a villain place that the X-Men are now reclaiming for their own is just Brian Bendis' Uncanny X-Men.
With the way that they messed up the Krakoan era, there's stuff that you could do here that would actually work, that you wouldn't have to tie in so completely close to Krakoa and do something we haven't seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Instead, we get the exact same villains that we had during Krakoa, which are faceless mobs. Okay, we get a back silhouette of people pulling their strings, but it doesn't fucking matter, because it's literally the exact same fucking plot we saw when the X-Men were fighting a bunch of Orcus thugs during Krakoa. Somebody pulling the strings that nobody knows who it is, and the X-Men are just going to have to keep beating up a bunch of fucking jabronis until the big bad, which is going to be at best a moderate bad, that they will dispatch in about 3 panels, because that's the way the X-Men are anymore. They can't actually suffer in any way, because all X-Men is a gay allegory now. So the gay allegories can't struggle against the bigots, or else you'd say the bigots actually have a point.
Well, the worst thing is that's definitely the most exciting, engaging part of the story. Almost half of it is just Beast talking to the sheriff about the state of things. And it's an enormous exposition dump about how the mutants feel about people, and about how people feel about the mutants. And the sheriff is upset because you took our jobs. You know, we can't make Sentinels anymore. And he's like, well, you know what those Sentinels are used for? I was like, I don't know, man. You blackmailed the entire world and tried to murder everybody. It feels like you were the assholes too. And it's like Glob Herman's there. Why?
Yeah.
No idea.
Look, it felt like part of this exposition dump was to try to still justify Krakoa and prove that they're not actually leaving that era. And the other half is a 10, 20 panel version of what they used to do, where they'd have just a schematic of the new fucking building. Here's where this is. Here's where this is. Here's where this is. It was almost like the pre-Hickman era data pages, but they do it in like the first or second issue so you could see, you know, as back matter, essentially. That's what they could have done here, but instead they had to show it to us. Honestly, it would have been a lot more effective with just a fucking blueprint. Print the blueprint.
I didn't need Beast giving her a tour of their hydroponic station.
Absolutely nobody did, except for it was an excuse to show that Glob Herman's in this book. Because, you know, he's got all those fans everywhere. He's absolutely going to draw in some readers. And then for him to be all cuddly and welcoming to the sheriff just so that Magneto could show up and stick his dick in the punch bowl.
That was my least favorite part of the comic book. And I like Magneto, maybe not as much as some people, but I think Magneto is one of the greatest villains of all time. But this new high and mighty, up his own ass Magneto that thinks that his shit don't stink. And I don't think this is meant to be like a heel turn or the beginning of one where he's going bad. I think they truly think that he's a good guy that everyone should look up to and that gets to talk down to everybody. I could already see I despise Jed McKay's voice and idea of what Magneto truly represents.
Somehow everybody's going to prove that Magneto was right, because there's a whole lot of people in that fucking office now and on the creative ranks that didn't ironically want to wear a Magneto was right t-shirt the way that Quentin Quire did back in the Grant Morrison New X-Men days. They actually believe it. Beast is going to be shown to be the naive one here, and he keeps calling him Max, and that was actually a halfway decent nod back to the fact that this Beast hasn't experienced anything of basically the last 35 years, about 35 years of the X-Men. He didn't experience any of that because this is a Beast from right after his time on the Avengers. Everybody was still calling Magneto Max back then. They didn't know his name was Eric.
My last word on the art from Ryan Stegman. The Magneto helmet is iconic. It's one of the coolest costume design elements out there. And he even fucked that up. It doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. It looks too big.
It looks like his dad's helmet.
It looks like when people wear the Magneto prop helmets, like the ones that Sideshow makes that you can buy. While it looks really cool on your shelf and the fact that you're able to wear it, Magneto's helmet was always very streamlined. It looked like it was barely larger than his skull. It was very, very tight to the head. And this one, it looks like Ian McKellen or the other guy from the First Class universe when they're wearing a helmet in the movies. It doesn't look anywhere near as cool as Jim Lee drawing Magneto wearing that helmet.
Yeah, so that is our review of X-Men #1 from Jed McKay and Ryan Stegman. As I said, if you came in here not expecting anything, I think you'll be satisfied. But if you came in here with any type of expectation of one way or the other on either side, whether it be the art, getting away from Krakoa, staying in Krakoa, I don't think anybody would end up being happy. I was very put off by this. I don't think it's a terrible comic book. It's exceptionally mediocre in its best parts. I will give it like 4 out of 10, 2 out of 5, something like that. Definitely not a passing grade for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 2 out of 5 is probably being a little generous, 1.5, because it doesn't accomplish anything. You had an entire first issue and launch issue. You did not draw me to come back in for a second issue. You bored me half to death with the first issue. Nothing you did here was even remotely original. It was just a mashup of everything else that everyone else has ever done on X-Men, and you thinking that if you stick it all in a blender, you can make a smoothie, a wonderful, wonderful smoothie, and instead you just ended up with a bunch of poop.
Absolutely, and that is our review. If you would like the full review, because we went almost 30 minutes, actually, obviously on YouTube, it's going to be about 14 minutes. I'm going to edit it out heavily because Doc cannot stop giving away those X details in the history of the X-Men, which we all do appreciate. You do have to go to Think Theoretical Patreon for the full review on the Doc Unfiltered podcast. You'll also get the Q&A with Doc, as well as the How to Not podcast featuring all the new comic books from Marvel and DC, all on that tier. Fantastic stuff there. There's a link in the video description.